Growing pains as Australia prepares to welcome 25 millionth resident. Australia's population is forecast to hit 25 million this week, marking another step towards an estimated 40 million people by the year 2056. According to Australian Bureau of Statistics, ABS, at current growth rates, by 2055 Sydney and Melbourne will each be home to around 8 million residents. Rising populations in Australia's capital cities and the impact on infrastructure, housing, schools, energy, health and environment will be significant. Paul Jones, Associate Professor of Urban Planning at the University of Sydney, said it was hard to put an exact figure on Australia's optimal population size. It's more about the quality of lifestyle and livability for citizens. Latest World Bank data reveals Australia's population growth rate, 1.4%, is easily outpacing India, 1.2%, China, 0.5%, Great Britain, 0.8%, and the US, 0.7%. Last year, 2 University of South Australia academics theorised Australia's optimum population size could be 15 million. They based their assumption on Australia recording a peak genuine progress indicator, GPI, in the mid-1970s, when the population was under 15 million. A country's GPI is a kind of human well-being index, according to economic, environmental and social factors. Here then, perhaps, is a sensible, optimal population size for Australia, since any larger number simply fails to deliver a net benefit to most citizens, they wrote. Professor Jones is concerned about the rapid pace of development he has observed in some parts of Sydney, and what that could mean for future generations. The inner and middle ring suburbs are feeling the brunt of the intensification, he said. This massive rise in apartments and towers around transport nodes have really caught a lot of local councils out. The speed and scale of new developments was causing dysfunction in the city by putting real pressure on public space and green environments, he said. Professor Jones said the Western Sydney suburb of Rhodes, recently transformed from industrial zone to high-density residential, was an example of poorly planned development. Towers and blocks are going up where there is not the capacity, and then services and infrastructure have to play catch-up, he said. The NSW government projects Greater Sydney will need around 725,000 additional homes over the next 20 years to accommodate a growing and ageing population. Sydney's population is projected to grow by around 1.74 million people by 2036. Professor Jones said he feared Sydney's massive $16.8 billion WestConnex toll road project would reach saturation point and clog up in less than 5 years after opening. We can't just keep putting more and more cars on the roads, he said. Research shows that when you build these new freeways in just 5 years, the capacity is taken up. Sydney needed a vast and granular public transport system to manage an estimated 8 million residents after 2050, he said. According to ABS data, Sydney's population now stands at 5.1 million, with a growth rate of 2%. Australia's largest city increased by 102,000 people in 2016 to 17, with 85,000, 83%, recorded as overseas migrants. Melbourne, with a population of 4.9 million, had a noticeably lower overseas migration rate of 64%. As Australia continues to evolve, Perth will leapfrog Brisbane as the nation's third-largest city by 2028, according to ABS estimates. By 2050, Perth and Brisbane, with respective populations of 4.6 million and 4.2 million, will have grown to a similar size of today's Sydney and Melbourne.